when Malawi became independent, one of the projects that President Banda initiated and implemented was that of moving the capital from Zomba, which became a university town, to Lilongwe, which is supposed to be more centrally located. And the logic of it was that way the development would spread a little more evenly from a more centrally located region. And Zomba is in the southern part of the country, whereas Lilongwe is in the central part. And today I happen to be very privileged to have a conversation with one of the parliamentarians, Dr. Jessie Kabwila. She is a member of parliament representing one of the Salima West, and that's, Salima is close to the lake, and she belongs to the Malawi Congress Party, which is one of the opposition parties, within here. And today, I must say that, Dr. Kabwila, I'm extremely grateful that you've granted me this opportunity to talk to you about something that I have been very interested in, and also, because you've said something about it. So I will shoot straight into it. Recently, you traveled to South Africa for some conference or something, and you were reported as advocating the use of local languages, or what sometimes people call vernacular languages, in Parliament. Now, that sounds like backing the trend, because the standard view has been that parliamentary proceedings, just like it is with education, that the language is supposed to be, for countries like this, English. So what exactly has motivated you to come up with that, what some people may consider very radical suggestion?
Thank you. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Jessie Kabwila. I am known as Honorable Dr. Jessie Kabwila. I represent Salima Northwest. As Professor has said, that is close to the lake. I'm also the chair of the Women's Caucus in Parliament, and also the chair of the SADC Women's Caucus, SADC Parliamentary Forum Women's Caucus. I'm also the spokesperson for Malawi Congress Party. I think if you look at me on those four hats that I'm wearing, it's crucial for you to understand, because issues of parliaments or power or government or governance, shall I say, are very crucial to those who are powerless and usually defined from what I usually call from without. And majority of those are poor people, and majority of them are women. So this is an issue that is very, very key for me. I also represent a rural constituency, and I think many times when I come during budget, it is very sad for me to hear my constituents, the people who sent me into this house, to actually say, they have to ask each other, the grandmothers ask, and they hear people say, meaning that the MP has spoken. They have to wait for reported speech. And sometimes those who report don't report easily. They don't have integrity. There are different emotions. It's also an issue about time. It's also about whether they will meet the right person. So since I joined Parliament, which is 2.5 years ago, I have been very, very astounded by the elitist manner in which we are doing business. So yes, I did advocate for this, and for me to advocate it actually came from the question that said, what are you going to do to make sure that the model law on ending child marriage that has been moved by the SADC reaches the women? And if you look at the model law, it is on paper, it is in English. When majority of the people that I represent, whether it is at regional level or in Malawi, majority of them, and from the issue that I stand for, which is of women issues, is about people whom history has edited out of the process to read and write. Now they are asked in the road, why are you not rising to demand your rights? And what I wonder is, how do they demand that which is being spoken in a language they can't understand? I am saying Parliament in Malawi should be done in vernacular, in the most accessible language, which is Chichewa. And the issue is, we cannot expect people to hold the executive accountable when the executive and the parliamentarians are doing, all the three arms of government are doing business in a language that is not accessible to them. To make matters worse, we have chosen to do a language that just is not restricted in terms of access and even currency, but also a language of the oppressor, a language of colonizers. Now, I don't care what anybody says, I want to underline the colonial legacy means that we are still being colonized. In other words, I am calling for an immediate decolonization of the parliament. When we are doing business in the most accessible language, it will force us lawmakers, whoever is doing, those of us who are talking about what Malawians are saying, to domesticate our concepts and make sure not only are they emanating from the people, but we are reporting them correctly, as they've said. If right now in Malawi we are saying we are working on a program-based budget, if you go to Salima Northwest and say we are using a program-based budget, that will be understood by minuscule. Yet we are saying it is their budget. When I stand in parliament, I say the people of Salima Northwest have sent me. If I speak in a language they can understand, then they can check on me. I can also know that I have made this advancement. This is what I said, and they are agreeing with me. In other words, what they call participatory democracy shall be strengthened. I will be held accountable. I can also do my business much better. Much more important. If you look at Ngugi wa Thiong'o, he has argued in the language debate eloquently. A people that does not use its language participate in limiting the length and the life of that language. It dies. Right now, I've heard people say things like, oh, if we open up to Chichewa, people will even be using proverbs. Or as if there's something wrong with African proverbs. The issue, it's precisely that which I'm saying, that as a people, we cannot know where the rain, we can't stop, as Achebe says, we cannot stop, dust ourselves, clean ourselves of the rain and make ourselves dry if we don't know where it started beating us. We must know where we've come from, and we are a people rich in terms of developmental concepts, what we should do when there are disasters, what we must do when we say this is what it is to be a Malawian. In other words, owning the language, the operative language of parliament means making sure that we are discussing Malawian issues and not issues that have been copy and pasted from England or from America or from China, from wherever. The role of identity, of who you are, is very crucial if you want to say you are talking with other people. I don't want to belabor the point, but I believe strongly that as an African, we are a communal people. We are very different from the West. Europe, you look at it, is built on individualism. People go there. I've been in Europe, I've been in the East or West. What I've seen, very, very different from who we are as a people. For us, even in greetings, we don't celebrate individualism. We believe you are alive when you ask other people, how are you? And that's what confirms who we are. And especially if I'm to take this to a gendered term, for women, we operate on the we. We don't operate on the I, because in our very own biology, we are made in a way that gives birth to other people. So for us, when we come to parliament, it is extremely crucial that poor people, those who are well-to-do, middle class, farmers, sweepers, name them, they are able to hear. You cannot honestly tomorrow say, I've spoken to Malawi, when you are speaking to yourselves. De-eliticization of knowledge is extremely, extremely crucial, especially in a country hit by poverty like ours. So yes, I am calling for this, and to me, I want to tell you, I'm happy that
many African countries are talking to themselves. You know, they are not concerned more about being understood by donors before they can understand themselves. They understand that knowledge is a continuous process, you know. If you go to Tanzania, they are using their own language. You go to South Africa, they are using their own language. What I am saying is, Malawi cannot go far if it does not own the voice it is speaking, if it does not own who it is talking to. For those who are worried that when I say Parliament should be speaking in Chichewa, some will say, but there are many languages in Malawi. It's very true. What I am saying is it's about access. It doesn't mean the other languages are not important. They are very important. In fact, if we can afford it, let us make sure we are using as many languages as possible. But let us not be derailed by egoistic fights about it should be my language, my language, to the point that we choose the oppressors, the colonizers' language, a language that is used by very few. That is not what should happen. We are talking of Chichewa because it is the most spoken, most written, and the most accessible. And given our means, we should focus on embracing Chichewa, look at the constitution, bring it in line with what is on the ground. And what is on the ground is that majority of the women, 52% whom religion and capitalism has kept out of the schools, they are not understanding. And we all stand up say, how do we develop women? How do we develop women? Well, I've got one major formula. Make sure that the business of policies, of implementation, policymakers like in Parliament, is being done in a language accessible to the most vulnerable, accessible to those who have not gotten the means in order to read English. I want to emphasize that the problem with English, it's a very patriarchal language. And as a person who is first and foremost a feminist, who understands how language is a battleground for power relations, I am saying, let us level the playing field more. Let us have a language that will allow everybody to come and know how many boreholes have they put. Have they put boreholes in this budget? Who is being given electricity? And what do we do for us to get it? What are the processes? Today I was talking about identity cards. The people at home need to understand. The identity cards that they are going to produce are going to expire. Why are we saying that's a problem? Because the processes of renewal will be a problem to poor people. You know, as we jostle ruling opposition, independent, the people out there should walk with us and become part of the conversation, not spectators in their own democracy. And the language of the Queen, unfortunately, is full of patriarchy. I'll give an example. For the English language, when they talk about a leader, they will tell you that there is a king and there is a queen. For us, it is not a gendered term. In other words, if Africa was left to its own, we could have continued with leaders that were much more gender balanced as we've got. But we have adopted the language of business where if you go to political parties, look at their constitutions, you find that they use he. Look at the documents of business, they use he, as if there are no she's. And what we are saying is, this is unacceptable. We are 52 years into independence. Let us decolonize our parliament. Let us open and make it more accessible to the rural community, majority of whom are women, majority of whom are poor people. That is what I called for when I was in South Africa, and I will be bringing a motion in line with that.
Well, thank you very much. Let me raise one more question. Strictly speaking, I should have raised this to the Minister of Education, Science and Technology, etc., because obviously, you know, that one is in government, all right. But, you know, a recent policy issue that came up was that of the Education Act, and the idea was that academic standards, happen to be falling, and the blame happens to be placed on the lack of proficiency in English. And apparently in Malawi, you know, the decision was made that English should be used as language of instruction from grade 1 or standard 1, all right? Which obviously means that, the stand you're taking also goes against the current policy towards education, which emphasizes once again the language of the colonizer, all right? And that, knowledge tends to be computed in terms of the ability to speak English as opposed to what you know. What's your take on that? I really, like I say, I should have raised this to the minister, but, as a parliamentarian...
Not at all. I think you are right. The minister would have been able to give you probably what steps they're taking and all that. But for me, I'm a shadow cabinet minister myself, and I hold 3 education degrees, and language is an issue that has been, that I'm very trained to be able to answer. I think the problem we've had is the whole problem of not decolonizing our education system. There's a difference between being able to understand, write, and, speak English. And that has often been conflated with being wise, with being intelligent, with being a good citizen, with competence to do things. There's been that conflation, and it's very regrettable. Research has shown that no culture has developed by perfecting what other people are doing, especially the colonial people. You see, early childhood education, whether we like it or not, you look at Germans, you look at Americans, you look at the British, they didn't come and follow what Malawians were doing. They had to own the right. They had to believe in themselves. I always say, if you are going to dream in the colors of someone else's dream, you will be following their dream, not yours. Until our education system understands that sciences cannot develop, we cannot say, I want to make a windmill, and you start asking a white person, how did you make the windmill? Then you think you start dreaming a Malawian windmill. It can't happen. We have to harness our own initiative. That is why ECDs need to be run in that way. I think mother tongue impact in terms of how people start developing, because you know what, whatever it is we call development, we are saying, can we make our environment better for all?
Absolutely.
That's the issue. Now, for us to be able to say, for us to make a cup, let's go and ask first how a white person, and then they define what a cup is. Look, they will patent that, and for the rest of our lives, we have to follow them. When they want to change shape of the cup, we have to go to them and say, oh, so now you are making square cups. Oh no, they are no longer round. Yet, until we own our own dream, that's when we can say we are going where we are going. In other words, education policy should not run on colonial entrenchment. We must not celebrate the fact that only when you know how to speak English, that's when you're doing this. I am not advocating that people should not have the proficiency to understand documents in English. I am very well aware of the globalization of English as a language. All I'm saying is Malawi must find a way to engage English as an equal, not from an inferior position. We should engage the English language from a position of having our own and understanding our own and being able to talk to ourselves before we talk to the English. But if we think we are going to talk to ourselves through the English, well, the English have come here to own our land. They've come here to own our religion, to own the way we think, to own the way we eat, to own who we are, and reduce us to commodities for their benefit. The English are not, it's not their responsibility to develop us. We are here to develop ourselves. We should treat English as a medium towards development, not as the harbinger, the hub, the anchor of, because a language embodies who people are. Look, because we have depended on this language so much, we think they are superior. And we meet them apologetically. We are a country that is running on laws of the English and the Americans. One wonders sometimes, who are we? Look, we eat like them. We get married like them. We have even reached a point of saying, if you get married in church, it's a white wedding. Ours, what is it? Black is equated to regressive. Malawian is equated to Zobole Rambuyo, backward, what is not developed, whatever. And then we think somehow, somewhere, we'll fit in a Malawi that means development. No. As a black person, as an African, we need to start understanding a follower will always be behind and will never overtake. And this West, the East, the whatever that we are putting in front, they are not here to do us a favor. This is a capitalist world. If you play with capitalism, it's a dog-eat-dog world. It needs to be regulated. And the part of the regulation is owning the language of business. Owning how we think, how we dream, how we define who we are. That's a very, very crucial thing. Whenever we see our children as we are rearing them, we must not teach them that what is Malawian is backward. Just because the few people we have taken over government here have been nothing but disastrous, mediocre failures, doesn't mean this whole country is full of that. That is not the story of Malawi. We can change this story, starting by saying, we are here. And we are proud of who we are. We've made mistakes. No nation has not made mistakes. But we are larger than those mistakes. And it starts by owning education system. It starts by telling our children Ntano, Zatu of where we came from. Before they are told of Pocahontas and the Barbie dolls and whatever. And the Cinderellas. Let's own our own story and actually tell a good story about it. Along the line, we tell them where we've gone wrong, where we've had mistakes, but we cannot let challenges define who we are. Because the day we do that, we are actually burying who we are, and we come from a very, very rich background. As Malawians, as Africans, a lot of what is celebrated in the West as strength are things that were taken from our continent. What I see often in the education system, in the health sector, even in parliaments, I see an African people who start admiring the chains that the oppressor has admired. And you say, he has given you better chains. Look at mine. Mine are shiny. And the other one says, mine are whatever. No. It is time to decolonize. Decolonize how we think, who we are. Even when we say, I belong to this religion, go ahead. Just notice what is borrowed and what is ours. Let us not reach a point of looking at a neighbor's house and saying, that's my house and that's who I am, when that neighbor is after your wife, when that neighbor is after your child, when that neighbor is after you. You cannot go to a person who has a former boyfriend and then say, I'm giving you a house to rent here. Does that make sense? Somebody who was a former girlfriend of your wife, and you say, oh, and they say, I want to come and rent here. And you say, no, come here and sit here. No, we don't do that. According to African cosmology, African ethics, you must own who you are, celebrate your identity, celebrate who you are. If even the legislations we are doing, there must be something wrong if the person in the village does not understand what we're talking about. And who we are is not a bunch of elites who went to America or who were taught by the British, whatever. No, we are not Malawi alone. Malawi is diverse, and for the record, majority of Malawians don't speak English. Majority of Malawians don't understand English. It is time we stopped looking at our grandchildren and say, reaching a grandchild where they go to a grandmother and they are speaking to the grandmother in English. What kind of development is that? A development that divides grandchildren from their grandparents. How are they going to know which tree is going to help them to end a headache? How are they going to know where they buried their aunties? It doesn't work like that. It is time to decolonize and make sure we are using the language that is most accessible to people.
Thank you. You go to the last comments that you think you might want to share.
Yes, I would like to say the issue of language and us changing in parliament and making sure that we are speaking the most accessible language in Malawi, that is Chichewa, and at SADC level, vernacular language, so let's say to say, needs to be matched with relevant educational policies. It must not be looked at the end. We need to now develop policies and institutions. We are looking for, even in constituencies, there should be spaces where people discuss with the MP what they have discussed in parliament. In Chichewa, making sure that the parliament is truly brought to the people, and their reactions should be there. We should put our money on making sure that what we call Malawi is not the preserve of a few. What we call Africa is not the present of the few. What we say, the world is not an issue of a bunch of men. It's not a boys club program or just something that is done by elites. No. It is time women, and the majority of the poor women, entered the discourse of this thing we call development. The development discourse must come to the village and speak the language of the village. Thank you very much.
Okay. I've been talking with Dr. Jessie Kabwila, a parliamentarian. We are in the Parliament building of the Republic of Malawi, and in conclusion, I'd like to express my sincere thanks
Thank you.
for
My
granting
pleasure.
me this occasion to have a discussion with you. These are topical issues of current moment, and I think that it's time that we go to address them head on, the way that you are championing this, especially coming from someone who is, has a seat in this august house here. True. So I sincerely hope that your ideas will be taken up and be discussed, and if anything, not just discussed but eventually get adopted in some fashion.
True.
But I really want to say thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
All
My
right.
pleasure.
Okay.
Yeah.